Hi everyone, my name is Camila Barba. I'm a neuroscience and behavior major, and my poster is on male mice exposed to female estrus demonstrate increased fear memory. The purpose of our study was to assess whether phases of the female estrus cycle influence response characteristics in male mice to aversive stimuli. These results can provide other researchers insight into potential confounds for behavioral research when using male mice in close proximity to females. We hypothesized that male mice exposed to females in estrus will freeze less compared to controls during fear conditioning. For preliminary testing, we conducted a vaginal lavage to collect cells and analyze them under the microscope to determine the female cycle phase. Images of the different types of cells are shown below. Our experimental protocol consisted of 4 different steps. Step 1 was preconditioning, where male rodents were exposed for 5 minutes to a female mouse in either proestrus, estrus, diestrus/metastrus, or to an overreactimized female. Males in the control group were placed in an identical polycart for 5 minutes but were not exposed to a female. Immediately following pre-exposure, mice received a conditioning protocol and were placed in the chamber in context A, which consisted of 3 tone foot shock pairings. Freezing is a natural response to fear in rodents. We would expect that mice would learn to associate the tone with the foot shock during the conditioning training and begin to freeze as a response to the tone. 24 hours after conditioning, we conducted a tone test consisting of 3 30-second tones with no shock. In order to avoid context interference, the context was changed to context B, adding inserts, a floorboard, a new scent, and a filtered light. The amount of freezing during each tone was measured to determine if the mice learned to associate the tone with the foot shock. An hour after conducting the tone test, we administered a context test to measure the amount of context freezing during a 5-minute session. Mice were placed back in context A, the same context they received the shock in, to determine if they learned to associate the context with the foot shock. In the conditioning graph, the y-axis illustrates the amount of freezing during the tone period. The x-axis illustrates the number of tones presented. Prior to the first tone, no freezing was demonstrated within any of the groups. The first tone shows slightly more freezing, but the shock was not received until the end of the tone. During the second tone, there is a little more freezing, demonstrating as the mice seem to be associating the tone with the shock. Lastly, during the third tone, there is an increase in freezing, indicating the mice learned to associate the tone with the shock. Overall, all the groups appear to have learned the task, showing a significant increase in freezing between the tones 2 and 3 in all groups. In the tone test graph, the y-axis shows the percent freezing during the tone test. The x-axis shows the group not exposed to a female and the group exposed to the estrus female. The males exposed to the female in estrus froze significantly more than the males that were not exposed, demonstrating increased learning. In the context graph, we measure the amount of freezing during the 5-minute context test. The y-axis shows the percent freezing during the 5-minute period, and the x-axis shows the males that were not exposed to the female and the males exposed to the female in estrus. There is once again a significant increase in freezing seen in the males exposed to the female in estrus compared to the males that were not exposed to a female. Overall, our hypothesis was incorrect. We believed mice would have a significant reaction to a female in proestrus when in actuality they froze significantly more when exposed to a female in estrus phase. We believed that exposing males to a female entering proestrus would cause the males to become more aggressive and less fearful. Instead, we observed the males demonstrate increased freezing. This suggests that males exposed to a female in estrus had enhanced learning and memory. One possibility for this phenomenon may have been the result of the female odor, which may have induced anxiety in males, causing greater awareness towards environmental cues. Finally, I'd like to give a special acknowledgement to Dr. Robert Stagman and a huge thanks to the members on my team for the great help and feedback.